Today we welcome an artist who uses materials and language from his ancestors to communicate contemporary ideas. Porfirio Guiterrez was born into a lineage of weavers in Oaxaca, Mexico. His textiles are not just beautiful, they're a profound connection to the earth, a living history, and a testament to the enduring power of tradition. His practice has evolved and expanded as he continues exploring current issues to inform his work. Welcome to Art Bites, a podcast from the Nelson-Atkins Museum of Art, where we take you beyond just the art on the walls and into the stories of the artist and the ideas behind them. I'm your host, Kathleen Layton. Thanks so much for joining us, Porfirio.
Thank you for having me. This is quite exciting.
Your work has been recognized by the Smithsonian, Harvard University. You've been featured in the New York Times, on PBS, in Vogue magazine. So your work truly transcends time. Can you tell us how this ancestral knowledge was passed down to you?
I was born in this tradition. This is something that has been part of my family lineage, part of the community tradition that informs my ancestors, and it goes back to, I don't know, my civilization or our civilization goes back to 10,000 years. So I could imagine that it came from that long, and I was born being part of it.
And what did that look like, being part of that, as you were a small child growing up in a household surrounded by art?
It was very natural. It was something that you never questioned, or you never really acknowledge in so many ways, because it's just something that you do. It's something that, you're born and you look around you, and that's what these people are doing. And so it was a great experience, but also the creative part of my career expands so much beyond the weaving tradition. My generation, it's still part of a generation that learned how to read nature, that learned how to create different objects that are utilitarian objects, but that are made by us, or the decision of the architectural need for our home. And so the creative part of me as human or as an artist connects directly to that beyond the textile.
And you are known for your vivid color. How do you achieve that color?
The color are achieved by a great deal of understanding of science, chemistry, understanding of the climate and the effects of the climate when it comes to the color.
So there are natural dyes that you use.
These are all natural pigments.
And what are the materials you're using to create those?
Well, the one that it's very iconic and very, something that influenced arts throughout the world.
Throughout history.
It's the cochineal insect. It's an insect that are breed on prickly pear cactus. These are genetically modified insects that were genetically modified maybe thousands of years ago. So that's one. And the rest of the pigments are either plants and few fruits as well.
And is that very labor intensive to get the color from those natural materials?
Extremely labor intensive. It is something that when I think of myself, I think, am I an artist, a farmer, a botanist,
I think you're all of those things.
All these things that relate and overlap to one another, all that has to be in place, and the labor aspect of these, it's extremely intensive.
And you use ancient tools as well. What is fulfilling about using those ancient tools that have been used for so many years by your ancestors?
I think the tools are essential to the spirit of my ancestors. My work, overall, it's not really my work. It is their work, right? I inherit their tradition, their creative spirit. I've inherited work that they've developed. I came from, masters of geometry and the work that we seen in what today known as Mexico, the architectural work. It's something that they had to figure it out, right? It's something that they worked for so long. And so in reality, using the tools or creating work with those tools not only connects me with their practice, with their material, but also in so many ways, my work is it lives, their soul lives through my work. That is a way for them to continue existing as creative, as an artist. And so when I think of my work, number one, I don't think of it as mine. It belongs to them and to the community. But I also think of their living spirit. That's the way that my work embodies their spirit.
That's beautiful. I love that. Well, you worked with textiles for many years, but you've now expanded your practice too. You include sculpture and performance art. How do you see your current work communicating contemporary experiences?
I think, and especially right when I am touching on experiences, I'm touching on migration, just political issue. I'm and really thinking this through the lens of a Native American. There is These are really important for me to communicate, and it does not always be communicated just on a flat woven textiles, right? These will have to it'll have to breathe and with different materials, different landscape of looking at the different subjects that I'm touching on, and so definitely my work has expanded quite a lot in the last 5-6 years, and into finding a way to express and bring the subject to life.
Now, it was 30 years ago that you walked for 10 hours to cross the border into the United States. That must have been a terrifying journey. Can you tell us about that?
That was quite a very difficult and dramatic experience. I think that adds just another layer of, like colonization, neo-colonization, and this oppression of the indigenous people. And so crossing the border was another layer of that experience. And I remember walking at night, because we had to do that. This is the time where you don't want to be visible. There's a particular color of clothing that you need to wear, and of course you have to have some food and so on. And I couldn't even see where I was stepping. These very small trails that the guide was walking us through, and there was a point where we almost got caught, and we ran down the hill so fast, as fast as you can, but you can't see where you're going. And as you can imagine, I almost lost a finger. It was traumatic, and just the whole experience. But that alone, it's obviously something that would mark me for the rest of my life. But another thing that was dramatic, as I was experiencing this process, is I said, why? How did a Native American, okay, someone's ancestor that has lived in this part of the continent of the Americas, find ourselves in this situation to where we're not only criminals, but we now have to sneak in our own house, in our own land, because that never existed before. And so naturally, in our DNA, I believe it sits in our DNA, this need of movement and interact with this land. But through the colonial period, it was divided. So we now are not allowed to get in certain places. And so that was another dramatic thing that daunted to me at that point. I'm like, this is absolutely dramatic. And there was one point where my ancestors walked on this land freely.
How does this fluidity across geography manifest now in your work? Because that was a very pivotal moment in your life that has stuck with you. So how does that manifest in your art today?
For today, I've embraced that. I understand there are these multi layers of identity um, and that has enriched my work tremendously. There's this saying within our community is no eres de aquí ni eres de allá, meaning you're not from here nor from over there, because when you go back, what today known as Mexico, you're not really, part of the community anymore as Mexican, or in this case as Zapotec, right? When I go back to my place of origin, which is Teotitlán del Valle. And so, but also when you come to US, you are the other, right? And so, but I was thinking about that. I said, well, that's not true. Actually, we are, I am, or I consider myself as this layer of identity that has enriched and has evolved, and in these cases, a creative, has helped tremendously in my work, and I don't think my work could have been and the way it is now if I would have not left my community.
Tell us about your performance art. What does that look like?
My performance art has really, or what I noticed that some of these subjects that I want to touch on has really found comfort space in the performance art. And one of the last work that I have done is a textile that I created that there's embellishment of, or not embellishment, but what I wanted to create, it was more sculptural work that involves braiding. And braiding is such an important symbolic element through the women's hair in our indigenous community. And so I created one work that I wore myself. So the work itself became an embodiment. And I then started to create these or create this movement wearing it. Those are a way for me to embrace my sensibility, my emotions, which I started to learn that it's an emotion that's very attached to a female figure, to that motherly sense of my mother, my wife, my sibling, my sisters, and so on. And when I think about their role in my life as human, but also as an artist, it has been extremely important through their prayers, the ceremony, and their care. My mother's a healer. So she's been carrying me since I was a child, not only give birth to me, but also caring for me as a doctor. And so wearing that piece was a way to embrace that, to continue to heal myself and acknowledge their love and care. And so so that's one of my latest performance piece. So it's more like a dance. It's more of a ceremonial dance.
But it's informed by everything that you have lived through up to this point.
Yes.
I just really love that. You also created a video called Starving Artist. You stood on a corner holding a sign.
Yeah.
Okay, what were you exploring with that?
You know what? I wanted, it's more like an exercise, right? An intervention, I think, too. Performance, sure. I really think about, as an artist, as a profession artist, our time is never valued. Our time is not valued by the hourly rate per se, and artwork.
Thus the term starving artist.
Exactly right. And so these concept of starving artists, I was really thinking about that. I said, one, we're not really employed by anyone that our hourly rate and so on it's worth, and our talent it's not worth, and the labor aspect of making it's not really worth. Maybe not even minimum wage when you think about it as an hourly rate. I was thinking about the concept and the meaning of starving artist, how it's being used, and the perception around that. But also, we don't really see it in action. And so my idea is to see it in action, to bring it to perspective. Hopefully, people will start thinking around. Artists are really, in so many ways, very vulnerable, and these concept, the permanency of a home, right? And so we're really unemployed every after, work, every after installation, every we're unemployed, right? And so and we could have so many time unemployed before we have another opportunity, or sell another work and so on. And but at the same time, we have kids, we have household to feed, and so the vulnerability of an artist sometimes we're not aware of as society. And so I took that to the streets. I created a cardboard that says "Starving Artist" on it, just to get some reaction, and it was very interesting to see what people were thinking. And what I noticed, what I my takeaway from that is, one, a lot of people thought that I was actually in a hardship, but and indeed, sometimes as an artist, we are in such a hardship, not economically maybe, but also the starving of creative time. You're so busy trying to put food on the table, and you're starving on the creativity time and space. And that's another thing that I was trying to convey within this exercise. And another thing is that people was really surprised to see, as I'm categorized Mexican, being on the street asking for money. Normally, you'll be working, and it's not common to see a Mexican asking or begging for money. So that was interesting to learn. Another thing that struck me is that I could be anything I could be as Mexican or as brown person, meaning I could be digging the trench, laying bricks, painting the house, doing gardening, but an artist, right? Like we like society, I could see that the hard time that society could have of seeing an artist, Mexican artist, brown artist, I don't know, because we are categorized or labeled as laborers.
Right, right. You put a face to a phrase, and people were trying to reconcile that as they were seeing you.
Absolutely.
Does creating art help you to answer questions inside yourself?
100%. It helps me to get some of these answers, because through some of these exercises that I have done, but also it helps me to heal and talk about these issues that otherwise I would not be able to talk about.
What do you hope a viewer takes away when they have seen your work, whether it's a sculpture or performance art or a textile?
I think my work brings a whole other a meaning, or a whole other view or understanding of what even art is. And I'll take you back a little bit, where in our community or in our native language, there isn't a word for artist.
Oh,
That
there
doesn't
isn't?
exist.
I
No,
didn't know
that
that.
doesn't exist. So artist, it's a term that does not, it's not.
It's literally a foreign term.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. And it's also based on, the colonization view, and it's also based on a very academia forms. And so, but what I want to say around this is that art, that's not, or the closest translation in my language will be benana. Benana is someone with wisdom. It's someone that has a deep responsibility to his or her community. It has a specific role within the community as an artist, right? As a creative. And so for me to be called as an artist, it's humbling, right? But also, what I'm hoping that people could view within my work is that there's also other way to be creative. It's not only one way. It's not a singular way to be an artist, or the definition to be an artist. You almost have to participate in these, system where you had to be certified as an artist. But in my culture, it's more of, again, responsibility, more of a spiritual aspect, and there's a specific duty that the artist has within our community. I really do hope that that the community could really understand beyond, what we understand as art or as an artist today, and expand that view into there's other way to exist as a creative spirit.
And how does this art that you create fulfill you? How does that realize your creative spirit, and what makes you keep going?
Um, so it is these different subjects that I have been very interested in talk about. It's also I notice, and this is what I just expand a little bit more. What I just said, what I was talking about is that so within the community, historically, there is when someone is born, when a baby is born, the parents are taking it's going to take the baby to a spiritual guide within the community to help the parents understand the responsibility of the baby to the community, and so that way the parents could then help the child to fulfill that. But around that, there's a lot of prayer ceremony. There's a lot of offerings happening, and so in my life, for a while there, I was quite lost in so many ways. In the United States, I was looking for something that I didn't even know what it was. So I tried many different things. I thought it was maybe I could do landscape. I think that would be great. Maybe that I work in so many also jobs that but it was not that. It was not even having a child. It's not even having a wife or a family. It was the art that was calling me. So I do understand that it's in the DNA. Like it's these prayers, it's this offering that my ancestors has placed for me, and the continued praise of my parents that allowed me to connect to that DNA information and found that energy, right? Until and I went back to Oaxaca almost 10 years into the country. And the minute I arrived and start absorbing the identity, and this is the first time gone back since I left.
That
And I
must
knew
have
I
been
found it.
very profound for
I
you.
knew I found it. And it was, again, it was through the weaving tradition that I connected to it. But then later on, that was like my school as a professional artist, if you may. The training process of me reconnecting with my identity and preparing me to expand. And that's really that I think that's what it's doing for me. It's being able to connect with that DNA creative spirit and that responsibility that I have, I believe, right, within our own community and now within our greater community, not just my community.
Well, we are only the better for you having found that creative spirit and to continue that tradition on. Porfirio, thank you so much for joining us and telling us your story.
Well, thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Art Bites, a podcast from the Nelson-Atkins Museum of Art. I'm Kathleen Layton, and we'll see you next time.